Chapter 17, we hear from Brooklyn. We gotta find out what her secret is, hopefully. I'm spending more time with the other kids than I have any summer. Maybe it's a mistake. Okay, it's definitely a mistake. I see the probing looks people try to connect me with a family in the dining hall or figure out which cottage I'm living in. I'm smart about not giving anything away. I've been doing this for a long time, after all. But Jet worries me. He's really sharp and he clearly doesn't trust me. With the two of us on Team Lizard, it's just not possible to avoid him. It's almost interesting to me to have a worthy opponent like that. Anyway, Needles is the main reason why this year is so different. I never minded being alone before. I was good at it. That was my life every summer as long as I can remember. I did a lot of reading. I took walks in the woods. I enjoyed my own company, mostly because I didn't have any choice. But now that I'm on Team Lizard looking after Needles and making trips to Hedge Apple, I realize something. I'm happier. I like having people to talk to, even if the subject is refilling a motor launch with diesel or cleaning lizard poop out of a paint tray. My best friend on Team Lizard is Tyrell, mostly because he doesn't act suspicious around me the way the other two do. He's a nice kid, too nice to deserve a perma rash and a sister who wipes the floor with him on a regular basis. I give him my behind-the-scenes oasis tour because, let's face it, I know this place better than even Magnus. I could draw a map, not miss a single blade of grass. That's how much time I've spent wandering around avoiding people. For example, I bring Tyrell to my favorite tree trunk in the woods. It's 4 feet wide and must be 100 years old. Bugs have hollowed it out to the point where it's practically a tunnel. I show him my favorite spot half a mile downriver. You can step out onto this broad, flat rock in the Saline. To reach it, you have to walk across the wreckage of an old boat that's wedged against the shore. I wind up the unofficial tour at the water sports shed about 50 yards from the lake. What's so special about this? Tyrell asks. It's where they store the spare oars and fix the canoes that spring a leak. Shh, listen, I tell him. Sure enough, as we approach the metal building, we hear a sharp crack, followed by several loud bangs and maniacal laughter. What's that? You'll see. It happens again. Thwack, bang, 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 and more raucous mirth. And a third time. Thwack, bang, bang. Ow, comes a cry of pain with more laughing. I lead Tyrell to a corner of the shed where the opening in the metal provides a view inside. Amid the stacks of life jackets, oars, and paddleboards, 3 buddies stand in a square of astroturf in the center of space. One of them raises a driver over his shoulder and takes a wild swing at a golf ball at his feet. Thwack! The thing takes off like a bullet, and the 3 men drop to the turf and cover their heads while the ball ricochets around the metal walls. Tyrell is amazed. What are they doing? I shrug. The Pathfinders are true believers in the oasis way of life, but the buddies are just ordinary workers to keep the place running. They've got no TV, no phones, no internet, so they get creative. I wonder what Magnus would say, Tyrell muses. He knows. Last year, one of the dining hall staff got knocked unconscious. Tyrell's eyes widen. It was pretty cool. Ivory picked him up and carried him to the Healthfulness Center. He nods. Ivory could pick up the Healthfulness Center. And one of the Range Rovers, too, I add. With her free hand. We can still hear the clang of golf balls bouncing off the metals as we start back towards the cottages. Tyrell points at an approaching finger. Isn't that Grace? What's eating her? Even from a distance, I can sense her agitation. Her cheeks are flushed and her body is so tense that she's walking with jerky steps like a chicken. Grace, I call. What's the matter? She hustles up to us, her expression tragic. Needles killed somebody. What? Tyrell is horrified. Who? A mouse, she announces sorrowfully. A poor little brown field mouse. You scared the heck out of me, Tyrell exclaimed. For a second I thought he might have gone after Jet's throat with those needle teeth. Crazy as it sounds, that was my first thought, too. It's almost that violent, Grace tells us mournfully. He struck like a cobra. The whole thing was almost over before it started. At least the poor mouse didn't suffer. Tyrell looks a little queasy. Well, I reason, I suppose that's pretty normal behavior, for a carnivore. It's totally normal, she agrees sadly. That's the whole point. We've been helping Needles because we didn't think he could survive in the wild, but this proves he'd be just fine. We have to let him go. I'm taken aback. Needles is the only reason this summer is bearable. Better than bearable. And now we can't keep him anymore. Tyrell has another opinion. Maybe Needles can make it on his own. So what? Most dogs could look after themselves if they had to. That doesn't stop people from keeping them as pets. So we keep Needles. It's the same thing. It's not the same thing, Grace counters. There's no law against having a dog. But think of how many rules we break just looking after one lizard. She begins to count on her finger. Keeping a secret pet. Stealing a boat. Sneaking to the hedge apple. Bringing back meat. Bribing Brandon with chocolate. The whole candy thing wouldn't have started if it wasn't for Needles. It's gone too far. It's like we're spitting in Magnus's face every single day, and it has to end. I'm about to give her an argument. Excuse me. I'm about to give her an argument. But she said the magic word, Magnus. When Magnus enters a conversation, I exit. Well, we definitely can't do anything until we talk to Jet, Tyrell puts in. Needles is his pet too. I'm not thinking about Jet. I'm not even thinking about Needles. I'm ashamed to admit that I'm only thinking about my summer, the friends I've made, the fun I've had. Is that going to crash and burn once there are no more trips to the hedge apple and visits to the rundown shed at the edge of the woods? We change direction and head out to the service buildings past the welcome center. Tyrell is still insisting that we can't decide anything about Needles unless Jet has a vote. Grace is adamant. Don't you agree that we've been breaking the rules and risking big trouble for too long? She asked Tyrell. I guess so, but she turns to me. What do you say, Brooklyn? We took in Needles because he was helpless, but he's not helpless anymore. I just nod. I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. Part of me knows that Needles or no Needles, we can't keep taking the launch to Hedge Apple without eventually getting caught. That would cause problems for the others, but for me, it would be a real crisis. Grace is triumphant. You see that already 3 of us vote that Needles should be free. So even if Jet says no, he's already outvoted 3-1. As we come up to the shed, something looks wrong. On second glance, I realize why. The lock is off and the slider is open at least 6 inches. Tyrell points. Hey! We run the rest of the way. Grace gets there first, heaves the door wide open, and we pound inside. The paint tray is overturned and up against the wall. Needles is gone. Tyrell and I wheel on Grace, who raises both hands to heaven. I didn't do it, honest. I wanted to, but somebody must have gotten here first. I drop to the floor, which is still wet from the spilled water. Tyrell and I search every inch of the shed. Outside, we run our hands through the tall grass and the weeds. I even try to feel inside the gaps under the wooden frame. If Needles is hiding somewhere, I'm about to get bit on my finger that I won't soon forget. But my fingers are safe. The lizard is nowhere to be found. Hey, what are you guys doing? I'm still flat on the ground with my hand under the shed when Jet shows up with a small bundle of hamburger wrapped in a napkin. Speechless, we stare at him as he peers into the shed and puts 2 and 2 together. What happened? How did he get away? It's for the best, Jet, Grace repeats, the spiel she gave us about why Needles needs to be set free. Jet's normally calm face flames red. Why did you do that? You had no right to do that. I didn't do it, Grace stands up to him, but however it happened, it was the right thing. I always thought Jet was above it all, too cool to let anything get to him. Until now. He gets down on his hands and knees and performs all of our searches 10 times, moving outward from the shed in concentric circles. He even cups his palms to his mouth and hollers, Needles, a couple of times before Tyrell and I silence him. Shh, I hiss. Someone will hear you. I want someone to hear me, Jet insists. I want Needles to hear me. Come on, Jet, Tyrell reasons. We all like Needles. But when did he ever come running when you called his names? When did he ever come running, period? Jet twists away from us and turns furious eyes on Grace. You're the one who said we had to have the lizard in the first place. You think I cared one way or another if he drowned in the river or got snapped up by a hawk? He'll be okay, she begins. You made me care, he thunders. And now I'm supposed to turn it off just like that? He snaps his fingers. Because you're done with the poor little guy? Yeah, well, I'm done with you. I expect him to storm off after that great exit line. Instead, he lovingly washes out the paint tray, fills it with fresh water, and sets a little mound of hamburger on the dry part of the slope. In case he comes home, he explains, leaving the door about 6 inches open. He then turns his back on all of us and walks away. Wow, Tyrell comments. I didn't think he'd get that upset. I didn't think Jet got that upset about anything. It's upsetting for all of us, Grace puts in, but we have to be strong for Needles. Oh, please, I mutter. Maybe you didn't let him go, but you sure wanted to. I scan the oasis property and the adjoining woods. Needles could be anywhere by now, but it almost doesn't matter. Team Lizard is history.